I awoke to the stinging scent of antiseptic and the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor, but the sight of my husband's signature on the termination of life support documents froze my blood. Paralyzed and unable to scream, I summoned just enough breath to whisper a single sentence. The atmosphere in the room shattered. The doctors exchanged terrified glances before one fumbled for a phone and ordered the staff to call 911 immediately. My name is Marin Caldwell. I am 34 years old, by trade. I am a risk assessment manager for the North Lake Compliance Group. My job is to predict disaster before it strikes. I spend 40 hours a week analyzing data to find the one weak point that could bring a corporation to its knees. I live in Briarstone, Ohio, a place where manicured lawns hide rot in the roots. I was good at my job. I was excellent at spotting liabilities in spreadsheets. Yet I failed to see the liability sleeping in my own bed. Gavin Hartwell was the perfect husband to the outside world. He was charming. He was attentive. When we attended charity galas or neighborhood barbecues, he played the part of the doting partner flawlessly. But behind closed doors, the dynamic shifted. The air in our home was always thin, controlled by a vacuum that sucked the oxygen out of the room. That vacuum was his mother, Evelyn Hartwell. Evelyn did not use force. She used a weapon far more dangerous. She used pity. She would touch my arm with her cold fingers and sigh. "You look so tired, dear. Let me handle the finances this month. You just rest." It sounded like benevolence. It was actually a coup. She was methodically stripping me of my agency, one helpful gesture at a time. I was becoming a guest in my own marriage. The warning signs were there. I just chose to ignore them. 3 times in the last month. My debit card was declined. The terminal flashed a rejection code that I had never seen before. When I confronted Gavin, he waved a hand dismissively. "It is just a bank error. Marin, don't be so dramatic. You are always making mountains out of molehills." He made me feel small. He made me feel crazy. I stopped asking questions because I was afraid of the answers. Then came the night before everything changed. It was 2 in the morning. I woke up thirsty and walked down the hallway. The door to Gavin's study was cracked open a fraction of an inch. A sliver of light spilled onto the hardwood. I heard his voice. It was not his daytime voice. It was low, devoid of warmth. The 72-hour window is the key. "Yes. Mother, I have the hospital papers drafted. We just need the event." I froze. My bare feet felt glued to the floor. Hospital papers. The event. I backed away slowly, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I told myself I was mishearing things. I told myself I was paranoid. I went back to bed, but I stared at the ceiling until dawn. I left for work early the next morning. The sky was a bruised purple. I merged onto the highway, my grip on the steering wheel white-knuckled. I needed to get to the office. I needed to check my insurance policies. As I approached the exit ramp, I tapped the brakes. Nothing happened. The pedal went all the way to the floor without resistance. It felt like stepping into a void. I pumped it again. Nothing. The speedometer read 65. A delivery truck was stopped ahead of me at the light. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my veins. I had seconds. I yanked the wheel to the right. The car spun. The world became a blur of gray asphalt and green grass. I slammed into the concrete divider with a bone-shattering crunch. The airbag exploded into my face. Dust and smoke filled the cabin. My ears rang with a high-pitched whine. Through the shattered windshield, my vision swam. I looked out toward the service road running parallel to the highway. A black sedan was parked there. It was too far to see the license plate, but I saw the figure standing by the driver's door. They were watching the wreckage. They did not pull out a phone to call for help. They simply watched for a moment, then turned around and got back into the car with chilling composure. Pain radiated from my chest. I drifted. The next thing I heard was the wail of sirens. The back doors of an ambulance threw open, revealing the blinding morning sun. A paramedic leaned over me, his face grim. BP is dropping. We are diverting to St. Alder Medical Center. Step on it. The darkness was coming for me. It felt heavy, like a lead blanket. I fought to keep my eyes open. I tried to move my lips, but my jaw would not obey. A terrifying realization took hold of me as the doors slammed shut. If I don't wake up, if I can't speak, who is going to tell them what happened? Then the lights went out. The darkness was not silent. It was a cacophony of mechanical rhythms and hushed urgency. I was floating in a void, untethered from my body, yet I could feel the cold, hard reality of the hospital room pressing in on me. The air smelled of isopropyl alcohol and latex. The lighting, which I could sense even through my closed eyelids, was a harsh, unforgiving fluorescent glare that burned red against my retinas. My body was a heavy, unresponsive stone. I was trapped inside a shell that refused to obey my commands. But my hearing was terrifyingly acute. Dr. Nora Keene was the first voice I identified. Her tone was clipped and professional, cutting through the fog. Severe traumatic brain injury, she dictated to a resident. Glasgow Coma scale is low, but look at the vitals. Her heart rate is strong. Her organ function is remarkable for this level of trauma. She is fighting. She is fighting. The words should have been a comfort. Instead, they were merely the prologue to a play I never asked to star in. From the hallway, a new sound drifted in. It was a performance I knew well. Gavin was sobbing. It was a choked, wet sound that I had heard him practice in front of mirrors before funerals of distant relatives. He was holding court in the corridor. I could picture him perfectly, collapsing into his mother's arms, his face buried in her shoulder while his eyes likely scanned the room for an audience. Oh, Mother. I don't know what I'll do without her, Gavin cried out. His voice pitched perfectly to carry down the ward. Evelyn's voice followed, low and steely, masked as maternal concern. Shh, I am here. We need to be practical now. Gavin, we need to handle her affairs. They entered the room. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The air grew thick with a tension that the nurses seemed to register immediately. I heard the scratch of a pen on a clipboard. A nurse noted in the chart that the family was exhibiting unusual aggression regarding paperwork. We need to establish the chain of command, Evelyn said. She did not ask about my oxygen levels. She did not ask if I was in pain. Who has the medical power of attorney? Who makes the decisions when she cannot? I do, Gavin said. I heard the rustle of stiff paper. He was placing a document on the metal tray table. She signed this 2 years ago. Gavin lied. His voice was steady now, the tears evaporating as if by magic. Designation of medical representative. It names me as the sole decision-maker. Dr. Keene paused. I could hear the hesitation in her movements. She picked up the paper. I have been Mrs. Caldwell's physician for 3 years. We have no record of this in her file. The signature. It looks a bit shaky. She was stressed. Gavin interjected quickly. She was worrying about the future. She signed it right before a business trip. The lie was smooth, but I knew the truth. That signature was a forgery. It was a copy of my handwriting, practiced but lacking the specific loop I put on the letter C when I am rushing. Doctor, Gavin continued, and I heard him step closer to the bed. He leaned over me. I could smell his cologne, a scent that used to make me feel safe but now made me nauseous. Marin was very clear about this. She told me once, over dinner. She said, Gavin, if I am ever in a state where I can't recognize you, if I am a burden, don't let me linger. She didn't want to be a vegetable. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Mr. Hartwell, Dr. Keene said, her voice cooling. She is stable. It has not even been 24 hours. We should look into long-term care facilities, Evelyn suggested. Her tone was casual, as if discussing where to store winter coats. Somewhere quiet, somewhere affordable. It would take the burden off the hospital. Speaking of which, does the hospital coordinate directly with the life insurance provider for billing, or do we need to file those claims separately? The room went silent. Asking about life insurance while the patient's heart was still beating on its own was a misstep. Even through the coma, I felt the judgment of the medical staff. Later that night, a detail emerged that I would only learn about much later, but it haunted the edges of that room like a ghost. The hospital's digital logs recorded an anomaly. At 2:17 in the morning, a remote login accessed my patient file. It was not a doctor. It was an administrative account, bypassing the usual security flags to view my prognosis. Someone was watching the data, waiting for the numbers to drop. By the end of the second day, the stage was set. Gavin stood by my bedside. The scratching sound returned. He was signing a new form, consideration for withdrawal of active intervention. He read aloud. His voice a whisper meant only for me. It is for the best. Marin, 72 hours. That is the window. If you don't wake up by then, well, I am just following your wishes. He capped the pen. The sound was like a lock clicking shut. He had started the countdown. The atmosphere in my room shifted from sterile neutrality to a suffocating, quiet paranoia. I was a prisoner in my own body, but my ears became my sentries. I heard the frantic scratching of pens and the hushed urgency of conversations that were never meant to reach me. Dr. Keene was no longer just treating a patient. She was hunting a truth. I heard her bring in Lena Ortiz, the hospital's senior social worker. Something does not add up. Lena. Dr. Keene whispered near the foot of my bed. The husband performs grief too well, and the mother controls the room temperature. I need you to audit the contact logs. The tapping of a keyboard followed. It was a rhythmic, staccato sound that felt like gunfire in the silence. This is strange, Lena said, her voice dropping an octave. The emergency contact listed in the admission file was changed 4 hours after she arrived. It was originally a cell phone number. Now it is a landline. I recognize the area code. It belongs to the Hartwell residence, who authorized an override on a comatose patient's personal data. A heavy silence hung in the air before the head nurse. A woman whose voice I recognized as the one who had sponge-bathed my arms earlier spoke up. I was there when they wheeled her in, the nurse said firmly. She was fading fast, but she grabbed my scrub top. She was terrified. She said, "If anything happens, call my lawyer. Do not call my husband's family." I wrote it on the intake sticky note. But that note is gone from the physical chart. My heart slammed against my ribs. They knew. The investigation deepened, moving into the shadows of the hospital corridors. I heard Dr. Keene discussing security footage with a guard outside my door. Apparently, a camera had captured Evelyn slipping into the records room near the nurse's station. She had no badge, no clearance, just the entitlement of a woman who believed she owned the world. But just as she reached for a file, the footage cut to black. Maintenance log says the camera went offline for 10 minutes due to a firmware update, the guard explained, sounding apologetic. Awfully convenient timing. The noose was tightening, but Gavin was oblivious to the suspicion building against him. He was too arrogant. He made a mistake that afternoon, a slip of the tongue that only Dr. Keene was sharp enough to catch. He stormed into the room, demanding answers about my latest scan. The MRI from noon shows swelling in the temporal lobe. Gavin snapped. Why wasn't I informed immediately, Mr. Hartwell, Dr. Keene replied, her voice ice cold. The radiologist did not upload those results until 12:45. How did you know the results at 12:30? I guessed, Gavin stammered, his confidence faltering for a split second. I just assumed the worst. He had an insider. Someone in the imaging department was feeding him data before the doctors even saw it. Dr. Keen did not press him then, but I heard her make a call the moment he left. She demanded a forensic analysis of the signature on the medical power of attorney. She wanted the ink dated. The response from the records department was slow, blocked by bureaucratic red tape that felt manufactured. Then came the digital threat. I heard Dr. Keen gasp as her phone buzzed. She read the email aloud to Lena, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "It is from an anonymous server," Keen said. "It says, 'Stop digging if you want to keep your license. Accidents happen in hospitals every day.'" They were trying to scare her off, but they didn't know Nora Keen. Instead of retreating, she stepped closer to me. She began testing my reflexes, looking for any sign that I was still in there. She leaned down and spoke to me, her voice gentle. "Marin, if you can hear me, I need a sign. We are looking into your work. We are calling Northlake. Northlake." The name of my company acted like a jolt of electricity, the fear of what they might find, or what lies Gavin had told my colleagues, sparked a synapse. My right index finger twitched. It was a microscopic movement, barely a tremor, but I felt it. "Did you see that?" Lena asked breathlessly. "I saw it," Keen whispered. But the enemy was escalating. On the third night, the rhythmic hum of my IV pump faltered. It began to beep erratically. A technician rushed in, swearing under his breath as he checked the display. "What the hell?" the tech muttered. "The flow rate is set to 0. Someone manually shut off her hydration. Who was in here before my shift? That was the breaking point." Dr. Keen declared she was placing a formal ethical red flag on my case file. This designation would freeze any major decisions and bring in an external review board. She thought it would save me. She was wrong. When Gavin found out about the hold, he didn't back down. He realized his window of opportunity was closing. He needed to act before the review board convened. He stormed back into the room, the smell of stale coffee and desperation clinging to him. "I want the paperwork for compassionate withdrawal," he demanded, his voice shaking not with grief, but with fury. "We are done waiting. Process the order. I am signing the final release tonight." As the pen scratched across the paper in the present, my mind retreated into the past, dissecting the anatomy of a murder that had begun long before the car crash. I remembered the early days. At our wedding reception, Gavin had raised a glass of champagne, his eyes shining with what I thought was adoration. He told the room that he loved my fire. He called me his warrior. But as the months turned into years, the definitions changed. My strength became stubbornness. My decisiveness became aggression. Gavin stopped calling me a warrior and started calling me difficult. Evelyn was the architect of this transformation. She never attacked me directly. She operated in the margins of our life. I recalled a Sunday brunch where she poured me tea, her face the picture of maternal worry. "I only want you two to be happy, Marin," she had said, patting my hand. "But do you not think you are being a bit too ambitious? Gavin needs a wife who is a harbor, not a storm. You are making him feel inadequate." It was a slow poison. They worked in tandem. Gavin began to insist I was unwell. He claimed I was working too hard, that I was forgetting things, that I was emotionally volatile. He staged an intervention in our living room, pleading with me to quit my job to recover my mental health. When I refused, he decided to force my hand. I remembered the cold Tuesday afternoon I tried to log into my work server. Access denied. I called the IT department, my heart racing. They told me they had received my email requesting an indefinite leave of absence for psychiatric reasons. I had sent no such email. When I confronted Gavin, he didn't yell. He looked at me with a pity that made my skin crawl. "Oh, honey." "Did you forget your password again?" he asked, tilting his head. "You sent that email last night. We talked about it. See, this is exactly why you need rest. You are confusing reality." He thought he had broken me. He thought I would crumble under the weight of his gaslighting. He was wrong. That was the moment my love for him evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I stopped arguing. I played the part of the fragile wife. I took the leave. But while he slept, I worked. I bought a burner phone and hid it in the lining of my winter coat. I changed the passwords to my personal accounts, enabling two-factor authentication that bypassed his devices. I began to compile a digital trail of every gaslighting attempt, every missing dollar from our accounts, and every unauthorized access to my devices. I built a failsafe. I rented a safety deposit box at a bank 2 towns over, a place Gavin didn't know existed. I named the file Larkspur. Inside, I placed a flash drive and a sealed letter. I gave the only physical key and a sealed instruction envelope to Dr. Evans, my childhood physician who had retired but remained the one man I trusted implicitly. The instruction was simple: if I am incapacitated or dead, open this. I owed this survival instinct to my Aunt Rowan. She was the black sheep of the Caldwell family, a woman who lived in a trailer but understood the law better than most attorneys. I remembered sitting on her porch steps the summer before she died. She took a drag of her cigarette and looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. "Listen to me, Marin," Rowan had rasped, the smoke curling around her fingers. A controller does not fear tears. Tears are fuel to them. It makes them feel powerful. No, a controller fears paperwork and timing. You keep your receipts. You document everything, and you wait for the kill shot. You don't strike until you can bury him. Rowan was right. Gavin wasn't afraid of my emotions. He was afraid of the truth. I had spent months preparing for a legal battle, waiting for the perfect moment to file for divorce and expose his financial abuse. I just never calculated that the timing would come down to this. I never imagined that the battleground would be a hospital bed, and that my 72-hour window to speak would coincide with his 72-hour countdown to silence me forever. I had the receipts. I had the plan. But as the ink dried on Gavin's signature in the room with me, I realized with terrifying clarity that none of it mattered if I could not open my mouth. The cat-and-mouse game intensified as the sun began to set on the second day. My husband was no longer content with waiting for nature to take its course. He wanted to force the hand of fate. I heard him corner Dr. Keene near the doorway, his voice low but vibrating with an impatience that terrified me. "I need you to sign the confirmation of poor prognosis," Gavin demanded. "We need to start the paperwork for the insurance claims and the funeral arrangements. Delaying it is just cruel." From the corner of the room, Evelyn let out a heavy, shuddering sigh. It was a perfect performance of a mother-in-law pushed to the brink of collapse. "We are just so exhausted." "Doctor," Evelyn said, her voice cracking, "my son needs closure. Marin would not want this limbo. I cannot sign that." "Mr. Hartwell, Dr. Keene replied, her tone sharp and unyielding. "The patient has strong vitals. We do not have sufficient data to declare her condition irreversible." "I am her legal representative," Gavin snapped, the mask of the grieving husband slipping to reveal the predator underneath. "She belongs to me. My decision supersedes your hesitation." While they argued, I heard the soft shuffle of shoes near my bedside. It was Lena, the social worker. She was moving with purpose. I heard the crisp sound of paper being handled, followed by a sharp intake of breath. She moved quickly to the door and whispered to Dr. Keene. "Doctor, look at this," Lena whispered urgently. "This is the original power of attorney," he submitted. "Look at the paper stock. The hospital archives use a cream bond with a specific watermark for documents filed 2 years ago. This paper is stark white, and the ink, it smudges. This was printed on an inkjet this morning." Before Dr. Keene could respond, the door swung open again. The air in the room changed. It was a shift change, but the doctor who entered was not on the standard rotation. "Dr. Keene, I am relieving you," a smooth, male voice announced. Dr. Eris, neurology. I will take over Mrs. Caldwell's care for the night shift. There was a pause, and then the new doctor spoke again, his tone shifting from professional to familiar. Hello, Aunt Evie. I got here as soon as I could. My blood ran cold. They had brought in their own player. The tension in the room was electric. Lena remained by my side, her presence a small comfort in the growing darkness. I heard her phone buzz against the metal tray table. She picked it up, and I heard a gasp. Oh my God, Lena murmured to herself. I just got an anonymous text. It is a photo, taken 20 minutes ago in the parking garage. It shows Gavin handing a thick envelope to the head of IT security. Dr. Keene had not left yet. I heard her voice, tight with panic. We need an independent consult immediately. I am calling the chief of medicine, and I want a security detail on this chart. But it was too late. Suddenly, the rhythmic beeping of the monitors ceased. The hum of the computer workstation died. The room plunged into a terrifying auditory void. System failure, a nurse shouted from the hallway. The entire network is down. We are flying blind for 12 minutes. The hospital was paralyzed. In that chaos, I felt hands on me, checking connections, but not to help. When the hum returned and the systems rebooted, the damage was done. Who changed the orders? Dr. Keene's voice screamed over the confusion. The chart has been updated. It says, comfort care only. Neuromonitoring has been disabled. Who authorized this? The system says you did. Doctor, the new physician, Dr. Eris, said smoothly. It is time-stamped right before the crash. The trap had snapped shut. Gavin walked back into the room. He walked right up to my bed. He did not touch my hand. He touched the plastic casing of the ventilator tube. I heard the click of a pen. If she does not wake up soon. Gavin whispered, loud enough for the room to hear. We end it. It is what she wanted. He was signing my death warrant. The rage inside me, hot and volcanic, finally found a connection. It bypassed my damaged brainstem and hit a nerve ending. My right eyelid jerked open. It was not a flutter. It was a violent, deliberate snap. For a split second, the fluorescent light burned my retina, and I saw Gavin's face inches from mine, his eyes widening in absolute horror. I had turned the switch on. I opened my eyes, but my body refused to follow. It felt as though I was buried under feet of wet sand. My limbs were leaden weights that belonged to a stranger. The only thing functioning was my hearing and the frantic, screaming consciousness trapped inside my skull. I could see the ceiling tiles counting the little dots to keep from drowning in panic. Gavin leaned over me. His face filled my vision. To an observer, he looked like a husband murmuring words of comfort to his dying wife. But I saw the glint in his eyes. It was anticipation. You are so tired, Marin, he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. Don't fight it anymore. I will set you free. It is better this way. His voice was honey laced with arsenic. He reached for the call button, likely to summon the nurse to witness my final decline that he was orchestrating, but the door opened before he could press it. Dr. Keene stepped in, her face drawn and suspicious. Gavin straightened up instantly. The predator vanished, replaced by the grieving widower-to-be. She moved her eyes. Doctor, Gavin said, his voice trembling with fake hope. But she looks so vacant. Is this the end, Doctor? Keene moved to the other side of the bed. She shone a penlight into my eyes. Marin, can you hear me? This was it. My chest felt like it was crushed under a boulder. I commanded my diaphragm to contract. I scraped every ounce of air from the bottom of my lungs. My throat felt like it was filled with glass shards. I needed to speak. If I did not speak now, I would never speak again. I forced my jaw to unlock. A rasping sound escaped my lips. Gavin froze. Doctor! Keene leaned in closer, her ear hovering inches from my mouth. "Larkspur," I croaked, the word barely a ghost of a sound. "Third drawer. Call 911. The room went deathly still. "Doctor." Keene pulled back as if she had been burned. She stared at me, her eyes wide. She knew that word. It was not gibberish. It was not a neuron misfiring. It was the password I had established in my old medical file, the one flagged for high-risk domestic situations. "Larkspur." She looked at Lena, who was standing by the window. "Doctor." Keene gave a single sharp nod. Lena moved with terrifying speed. She crossed the room and threw the deadbolt on the door. Then she stepped in front of it, crossing her arms. She pulled her radio from her belt and spoke into it. "Code Gray in room 312. Security to the door. Nobody in or out." Gavin stood paralyzed. For half a second, his face went blank. He did not ask if I was okay. He did not rush to hold my hand. He looked at the locked door, then at Dr. Keene, and finally at me. It was a look of pure, unadulterated fear. He was not worried about losing his wife. He was worried about losing his cover. "Doctor." Keene pulled out her cell phone. She did not dial the hospital operator. She dialed 3 digits. "This is Dr. Nora Keene at St. Alder Medical Center," she said, her voice shaking with adrenaline but clear as a bell. "I have a patient alleging medical tampering and fraud. We have a hostile family member in the room. Send police." Immediately, the color drained from Gavin's face. He lunged toward the doctor, his hands balling into fists. "What the hell are you doing?" he snarled, the veneer of the grieving husband shattering completely. "She is delirious. You are crazy." I watched him unravel. The paralysis in my limbs was still there, but the weight on my chest was gone. For the first time in 72 hours, I took a full breath. I had dropped the match. Now I just had to watch him burn. The arrival of Detective Miles Reyes changed the molecular structure of the room. He did not look like a savior. He looked like a man who had seen too many domestic disputes end in body bags. He walked in with 2 uniformed officers who immediately separated Gavin and Evelyn from the treatment area. They were escorted to opposite ends of the hallway, breaking their feedback loop of lies. I watched through the glass partition, my vision clearing minute by minute as the hospital room transformed into a crime scene. Lena Ortiz wasted no time. She handed a tablet to Detective Reyes, her finger stabbing at the screen. "Look at the access logs." "Detective," Lena said, her voice hard. "We have a remote login to her patient file at 2:17 in the morning. It originated from an IP address registered to the hospital administration network. But the user credentials belong to a billing clerk who has been on vacation for a week." Beside her, the biomedical technician stepped forward. He looked terrified but determined. He pointed to the IV pump that had been disconnected from my arm. "This machine does not glitch like that," the technician stated firmly. The flow rate was not a software error. Someone went into the manual override settings and zeroed it out. You have to hold the button down for 5 seconds to do that. It was deliberate. Then came the hammer blow. "Doctor." Keene unlocked the drawer where she had secured the envelope I had directed her to. She pulled out the Larkspur file. It was a simple manila envelope, sealed with tamper-evident tape, which I had entrusted to my old family doctor years ago for safekeeping. Inside were 3 things: a notarized affidavit of my true signature, a list of aggressive divorce attorneys, and a handwritten directive that read, "If I lose the ability to speak, open this immediately. Doctor." Keene held up the signature sample next to the medical power of attorney Gavin had presented. The difference was laughable to a trained eye, but the real weapon was the flash drive taped to the paper. "There is an audio file on here," Dr. Keene told the detective. "Mrs. Caldwell backed it up to a cloud server and gave us the access key in this instruction letter." She played the clip on her phone. The audio was grainy, recorded from inside a pocket, but Gavin's voice was unmistakable. "The 72-hour window is critical. If she is under that long, the insurance payout doubles. We just need the doctors to sign off on the cognitive decline. The money handles the debt. Mother, Gavin, standing in the doorway where he had been detained, went pale. But the revelations were not over. Lena revealed the source of the parking garage photo. It was not a random observer. It was a member of the hospital's own IT department. Evelyn had bribed him to crash the network and wipe the security footage. But when he saw the police cars pull up, his nerve broke. He had sent the photo to Lena as a peace offering to the authorities, flipping on Evelyn to save his own skin. It became clear then that this was not just about life insurance. Detective Reyes skimmed the documents in the file. Evelyn's plan was far more insidious. She did not just want me dead, she wanted me declared incompetent. If I survived with brain damage, Gavin would gain conservatorship. He would control not just the insurance money, but the prenuptial assets I had protected. They wanted to turn me into a ghost in my own life. Gavin tried one last desperate pivot. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "She is paranoid," he shouted, sweat beading on his forehead. "She is unstable. Look at this." She planned a setup. She orchestrated this whole accident to frame me because she is having a psychotic break. Detective Reyes looked at Gavin, then looked at me. I was weak, bruised, and hooked up to machines, but my eyes were clear. She just woke up from a coma. "Mr. Hartwell," Reyes said, his voice flat, and the first thing she did was tell us exactly where to find the evidence to arrest you. That does not sound like psychosis to me. That sounds like a witness statement. Dr. Keene ordered the nurses to prepare me for transport. I was being moved to a secure VIP wing, guarded by an officer. As they wheeled me out, I saw the police confiscate Gavin's phone. He reached for it, but an officer slapped his hand away. The cracks in his reality were spreading fast. I had planted the seeds of his destruction months ago, but watching them bloom in real time was a satisfaction that no pain medication could rival. Tessa Whitmore swept into the hospital wing with the kinetic energy of a woman who billed $600 an hour and was worth every penny. Her arrival was not a coincidence. It was a mechanism I had engineered months ago. When I whispered the word Larkspur to Dr. Keene, it did not just alert the hospital staff. It triggered a digital deadman switch that sent an automated distress signal to Tessa's encrypted server. She was there before Gavin even had time to call his own mediocre lawyer. She did not come to negotiate. She came to conquer. Within 10 minutes of arriving, she had slapped a stack of motions onto the desk in the small conference room where Detective Reyes was holding Gavin. "Emergency restraining order," Tessa announced, her voice crisp and echoing off the linoleum. "Immediate freeze on all joint assets, and a formal petition for a criminal investigation into medical document forgery. Mr. Hartwell, you are not walking out of here with a cent." Gavin looked at her, then at his mother. Evelyn sat in the corner, clutching her pearls, her face a mask of aristocratic indignation. "This is absurd," Evelyn scoffed. "Marin has no money for a lawyer like you. She is a mid-level manager. This is a bluff." "That is where you are wrong," Tessa replied with a shark-like smile. "You assumed Marin was isolated. You assumed she was financially dependent. But you forgot about Rowan Caldwell." The mention of my late aunt made Evelyn flinch. She had always dismissed Rowan as trailer trash, but Rowan was smarter than all the Hartwells combined. "Rowan left a blind trust," Tessa explained, enjoying every syllable. "It is a break glass in case of emergency fund. It activates only under specific conditions involving medical incapacitation by a third party. When Marin said the code word, the trust unlocked. It covers unlimited legal defense and private investigation. You are not fighting Marin anymore. You are fighting a war chest." Gavin looked sick. He tried to speak, but Tessa cut him off by sliding a document across the table. "Let's talk about the $300,000 loan you took out against Marin's 401k, Tessa said. "The bank has the paperwork on file. Here is the signature, and here is a forensic analysis I had my office run an hour ago. It is a clumsy forgery. Gavin. You didn't even lift the pen between the first and last name. I needed to cover margins, Gavin stammered, sweat visible on his upper lip. It was for us, for our future. And the parking garage, Detective Reyes interjected, stepping forward. Evelyn straightened her spine. I have no idea what you are talking about. I was nowhere near the records room or the garage. I am a respectable woman. My reputation in this town is spotless. Your reputation is about to take a hit, Reyes said. You thought wiping the main server was enough. But hospital security systems have a redundant backup on a localized drive for liability reasons. We pulled the footage 10 minutes ago. It shows you Mrs. Hartwell handing a wad of cash to the IT guy. It is in 4K resolution. We can count the bills. I watched from behind the observation glass of my secure room. I could not hear everything through the thick pane, but the audio feed from the room was being piped into a speaker by my bed. Tears streamed down my face. They were not tears of sadness. They were the hot, cleansing tears of a person who has been gaslit for years and finally sees the world acknowledge their reality. For the first time, I wasn't the crazy wife. I was the victim with the receipts. Gavin saw the walls closing in. He looked at his mother, then at the detective. He stood up and walked to the glass partition, pressing his hand against it. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Marin, please," he mouthed. "Let me talk to her, just for a minute." Tessa looked at me through the glass, waiting for my signal. I nodded once. They let him in, but with 2 officers standing right behind him. He fell to his knees by my bedside. "Baby, please," Gavin cried, grabbing the bed rail. "I didn't want to. I was pressured. It was her. It was my mother. She said we needed the money. She said you were suffering. I just wanted to help you." He was throwing his own mother to the wolves to save himself. It was pathetic. It was exactly what I expected. "If that is true," I whispered, my voice stronger now, "then prove it." I motioned to Tessa. She handed me a clipboard and a pen. On it was a simple statement. Gavin Hartwell, confirmed that the medical power of attorney was provided to me by Evelyn Hartwell, and I submitted it knowing the signature was not authentic. "Sign it," I rasped. "Sign it, and I will tell the judge you were manipulated. It was a lie, of course, but Gavin was desperate. He saw a lifeline and he grabbed it. He didn't read the fine print of the situation. He just wanted to shift the blame. Okay, I'll sign." Gavin wept. "I am so sorry. Marin." He scribbled his name on the line. I took the clipboard back and handed it to Detective Reyes. "Thank you," I said, looking Gavin dead in the eye. "You just confessed to conspiracy to commit fraud and medical interference. There is no manipulation defense for signing a death warrant. Gavin." The realization hit him like a physical blow. He had just signed his own confession. The game was no longer a domestic dispute. It was now a criminal case. And I had the star witness signature in ink. My voice returned slowly, a rasping whisper that gained strength with every sip of water. I sat up in the hospital bed, facing Detective Reyes. I needed him to understand that the accident was not an accident. The brakes felt soft. "Detective," I said, gripping the bedsheet. It was like stepping into a sponge. And there was a black car parked on the service road. A man was watching. He didn't call for help. He just turned away. Reyes took notes without looking up. That small detail about the black car, which seemed insignificant in the chaos of the crash, turned out to be the key that unlocked the entire timeline. By the next morning, the forensic report on my vehicle came back. It confirmed my story. The brake lines had been bled, not cut, a subtle sabotage designed to fail only at high speeds. A mechanic at a local garage in Briarstone came forward after seeing the news. He remembered Gavin coming in 3 weeks prior, asking hypothetical questions about emergency brake repair costs and how hard it would be to trace a fluid leak. Then came the second blow to their conspiracy. Dr. Eris, the neurologist who had conveniently replaced Dr. Keene during the critical window, was not just a family friend of Evelyn. He was currently the subject of an internal hospital audit regarding gifts received from wealthy families in exchange for expedited consults. He was a hired gun in a white coat. While I lay in the hospital, Tessa Whitmore was dismantling my home. She had secured a search warrant for the house Gavin and I shared, in his home office, hidden deep within a hard drive subfolder simply labeled Admin. They found the smoking gun. It was a digital workshop of forgery. There were scans of my signature from old birthday cards, high-resolution images of hospital letterheads, and draft copies of the power of attorney document with different ink saturations. Gavin fought back with the ferocity of a trapped animal. He filed an emergency motion for temporary guardianship, claiming I was suffering from post-traumatic paranoia and was mentally unfit to make legal decisions. He tried to paint me as the villain of my own tragedy. Dr. Keene shut him down. She wrote a scathing medical addendum to the court. The patient is fully oriented to time, place, and person. She read to me from her report. Her fear is not a symptom of instability. It is a rational response to a documented threat. But the cruelest revelation came when Lena showed me the digital logs of Gavin's scheduled meetings. He had set an appointment with the hospital administration to sign the final termination of care papers exactly at the 71st hour. He did not even want to wait for the full 3 days. He wanted to beat the clock. He wanted to ensure that if I did wake up, legally, I would already be gone. Evelyn, seeing the walls closing in, tried one last manipulation. A mutual acquaintance, a woman from the country club, visited me with a message. She claimed she was just passing along well wishes, but her whisper was pure Evelyn. Your mother-in-law says that if you stay silent, if you drop the criminal charges and call this a misunderstanding, she guarantees you will live comfortably for the rest of your life. I laughed. It hurt my ribs, but I laughed. It was a confession. They were terrified. I told Tessa I was done hiding in the hospital room. I wanted the emergency hearing to be public. I wanted the local press there. We were not going to leak salacious gossip. We were going to release hard evidence. I spent the night memorizing the timeline, rehearsing my statement until my voice was steady and cold. I had all the pieces, the forged documents, the audio recording, the tampered breaks, and the corrupt doctor. But I knew there was one final nail needed to seal their coffins. I knew exactly what I had to say to Gavin when I looked him in the eyes in that courtroom. I was going to deliver the final blow myself. The doors to the courtroom swung open, and the hush that fell over the gallery was heavy with anticipation. I walked in on my own 2 feet. My ribs still ached, and my head throbbed with a dull rhythm, but I refused the wheelchair the bailiff offered. I needed Gavin to see me standing. I walked past the row where Evelyn sat, her posture rigid as a statue, and locked eyes with my husband. He looked small. He looked like a man who had already lost. You signed for me to die while I was alive, I said, my voice steady enough to reach the back of the room. Gavin started to stand up, his face a mask of panic. Marin, please. You don't understand. Detective Reyes stepped forward before Gavin could spin another lie. He laid out the evidence with the precision of a surgeon. He presented the forged power of attorney, the digital logs showing the unauthorized access to my medical files, and the technical report on the infusion pump. Then he brought up the vehicle inspection. The report on the brakes was damning. It showed deliberate tampering designed to cause a catastrophic failure at highway speeds. But the final blow was the audio file. Detective Reyes played the full recording from the cloud server, the one I had saved in the Larkspur file. The courtroom listened in stunned silence. The 72-hour window is critical. Gavin's voice played from the speakers. Then, a second voice cut in. It was sharp, commanding, and undeniably Evelyn. Sign it. Gavin. The other doctor is taken care of. We cannot afford for her to wake up and contest the assets. Evelyn gasped. The color drained from her face so completely she looked like a corpse. The audio recording proved she was not a bystander. She was the architect. The judge did not hesitate. He looked at Gavin with undisguised disgust. "Mr. Hartwell, I am terminating your medical power of attorney effective immediately. I am also issuing a permanent restraining order. Furthermore, given the evidence of fraud and potential attempted homicide, I am referring this entire file to the district attorney's office." Gavin crumbled. The facade of the grieving, supportive husband shattered into 1,000 pieces. He turned on his mother with a feral desperation. "It was her," Gavin screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Evelyn. "She told me to do it. She said Marin was ruining us. I just did what she said." Evelyn tried to maintain her composure, but her hands trembled so violently she could not even grip her designer handbag. She stared straight ahead, refusing to look at the son she had manipulated and then destroyed. I did not need to scream. I did not need to rage. I simply opened the folder in front of me and read a single line from the letter I had written to myself months ago, the letter that saved my life. If I am silent, they will write my life for me. The bailiffs moved in. Gavin was handcuffed right there in the courtroom for violating the initial protective order and for spoliation of evidence. As they led him away, he looked back at me, his eyes wide with the realization that he had underestimated the woman he married. Evelyn was detained for questioning regarding the bribery of hospital staff and conspiracy. Her social standing in Briarstone evaporated in an instant. I spent the next hour signing papers of my own. I signed the divorce filing. I signed the order freezing our disputed assets. Then I used the funds from Aunt Rowan's trust to establish a new initiative at St. Alder Medical Center. It would be an independent oversight program designed to protect vulnerable patients from family coercion. I wanted to ensure that no one else would ever wake up to find their life being signed away by the people who were supposed to love them. I walked out of the courthouse and into the bright afternoon sun. The air tasted sweet. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to my own number, a final entry in the digital diary that had been my only witness. I am awake. And this time, I am the one signing. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment below and let's share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel Lily Revenge Stories, hit the like button, and give us a hype so this story can reach even more people.